time for Wednesday's hour number 2 on hashtag Daily K with your host, Peter Bint. Korean dramas, movies, and even lyrics. Why is the world paying attention to Korean stories?
From classics to modern masterpieces, time to dig deep into the charms of Korean literature.
On Check It Out
with Paul Matthews.
Jennifer says, hey, Peter and Paul, I can't stay since I'm on holiday and wanted to say hey while I could.
Okay, well, have fun.
Is it better for someone to say hey and then disappear straight away?
Yes.
Rather than just not be there?
Yeah, because it means
expectations.
No, because it means you care.
Okay.
It means you care. If you sort of pop in to say, sorry, can't be here, bye, then at least people are like, oh, that was nice.
But isn't it like, oh, but
you just don't bother to turn up.
But, oh, they're gone. Don't you not miss something if you didn't know it was there?
But heartache is also joyful.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Did we learn that in a recent book, I feel?
Possibly.
I mean,
this is usually with career, it's all about the heartache.
We're talking about chickens, and Geek Diggy says, I love the name, by the way, raising a chicken to maturity is almost impossible. Mother Nature does not want chickens to live at all.
Well, I mean, let's face it, their cousins went extinct.
What are a chicken's cousin?
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
Chicken is basically a feathered dinosaur.
If you look at its feet...
If you look at the whole thing...
We eat them as well.
They're delicious. I bet dinosaurs were tasty.
Dinosaur feet, you reckon?
Oh, yeah.
No, it wouldn't be
No,
would
it would be gongnongbal.
Gongnongbal.
Dinosaur feet.
Lovely. Yeah, and I thought you were going to say dodos were the cousins, but I guess they're also part of the same family with their feet. I think so.
No, I
Bird
don't know.
family.
I don't know the origins. I can't tell you the species.
I think they're all the same.
They're all the same.
We're talking tak or chicken, and we talked samgyetang. I don't know if we've talked about... We must have talked about samgyetang on the show before. And I know you're very honest with what you do like and dislike. I remember now, kimbap is not your favourite.
Hate kimbap.
Okay, very much not your favourite. Samgyetang, where do we stand there?
Samgyetang, I think samgyetang is delicious.
Okay.
My only problem is I'm a taeyang.
You're a hot heat person.
I'm a hot body. Okay. I'm a big hot body.
So that's not good for your body type.
Exactly. So in Korean traditional medicine, you have these 4 body types. You can be a big hot one, a small hot one, a big cold one, or a small cold one. I'm a big hot one. So ginseng sets my heart a-racing.
Oh.
Which is fine. So normally with samgyetang in Korea, if you go to a normal place, you're not going to get much ginseng anyway, and I just fish it out.
Yeah.
And I love it because there is nothing quite like getting a whole chicken. You get a whole chicken for yourself.
You do. It's not a massive, like, Western-sized chicken.
No, it's like a poussin.
Yeah.
It's like a little baby chicken.
They were sold in Sainsbury's when we were little, I remember.
Yeah.
And my mum would use those for the Japanese lady she taught to cook samgyetang.
Exactly.
Tiny little ones.
But the best thing is you got a little bowl of the salt and pepper. And just getting a little of the flesh.
Yes.
Whether you like the breast or the thigh or whatever, and you dip it in the salt and you have a bite of that, then you get some of the rice and the soup. Have some of that. The one I will recommend, which is not necessarily so traditional, is the dulke samgyetang.
Oh, wow.
So this is the perilla powder samgyetang.
You like that one?
Yeah, it's really thick and soupy. So it's less like a broth and more like a stew.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That does sound delicious. Geek Diggy saying, yeah, it's kind of like maybe a Cornish game hen size.
Yeah, it's sort of similar. It's again, it's a different bird, but yeah, the same sort of size.
Yeah, it is really
I'd compare
delicious.
it to a pigeon.
Pigeon.
I love pigeons.
Pigeon soup?
No, roast pigeon.
Roast pigeon. Okay.
Yeah, pigeon pie.
I've never
had a pigeon pie.
I've never had it. I don't know if I will. We are going to be getting into today's book.
Can I just hold on?
Have you got a dad joke for tak chicken?
No, I was just going to say, what's my name?
Paul Matthews.
Yeah. You see, I've got a new contract with Arirang.
Yeah.
And now officially, Peter can never only call me by my given name at any time. He has to call me by my full name.
But not necessarily middle name.
No, not the middle name, just the given name and the surname.
Okay.
What's my name?
Paul Matthews.
Thank you.
I have to call all our guests with their surnames. But luckily...
If you catch Peter just calling me Paul...
Yeah.
you're allowed to dob him in.
Well, then, listeners, you will go by the same standard. I want you to
No. We're fine.
Out.
We're fine. I can call you just Peter.
No, you can't.
I just did. Several
well,
times.
you can't. What is today's book? Are we going to go just by the first name of the author?
Okay, pop quiz, Peter.
Yeah.
What's tomorrow?
15th of August. Liberation Day.
In Korean?
Kwangbokjo.
Which means?
The day the light returned.
Exactly. I'm glad you know your stuff, Peter.
I do, because I've been hosting this show for
but
many
it's
years.
It's a sign of a quality host.
Okay.
Who when I say pop quiz, you can remember it. You can recite the proper name, the day the light returned, off the top of your head.
I think I've failed many of your pop quizzes, so
That's all right.
this is the first
you got
of
this one. Tomorrow's
many.
a big day in Korea. It's a national holiday, which means lots of people are going to be having the day off.
Yep.
But lots of people will also be putting the flag outside their house.
We're live, by the way, just FYI. Just FYI. Not you, but me and Ryan. I was saying we in that sense.
Oh, you mean tomorrow, not now? We're not live now.
We are live now. We are live.
This is recorded.
10:13 and 7 seconds.
What? Where is that time?
Wednesday.
Where is that time?
In Korea?
Yeah, Korea time.
KST, yes. So, what's that got to do with anything? Tomorrow with the flags out and everything.
What else happens tomorrow? It's a day off. People put the flags out.
Yeah.
There's a memorial ceremony. What else is there? It's a very big event. To do with tofu.
What?
To do with eating tofu.
Now you've thrown me off completely.
A big handful of white tofu.
I did not know this. What happens?
Well, let's say you get arrested for your numerous crimes.
Okay.
And you spend some time in jail.
Yeah.
And you get out of jail. What's your mum going to be handing you when you get out of jail?
I think I have heard that tradition.
And what do you get?
Is it tofu?
It's tofu. You eat tofu to stop yourself going back in.
Okay.
Because tomorrow there will be special pardons. Every Kwangbokjo, every Liberation Day, this is a day where the president, the government will announce a list of pardons. And this can range from, petty crimes right up to, people who are spending years and years and years in prison. In fact, there's a film titled, I think it's Kwangbokjo Tukjip, starring Sol Gung-gu, a comedy from about 20 years ago that deals with two prisoners who didn't realize they were going to get released and tried to escape.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about prison. So this is my long-winded way of saying I've got a story about prison today.
Yeah. Wow.
Because it's a story about the North and the South. It's a story about two divided sides. And it's a story about those who maybe don't have any hope of escape. But there may be some love. In fact, there may be some Gingko Love.
Gingko Love?
Yeah. Unheng-namu sarang.
That's the
name of the story.
In Korean and English.
Yeah, it's written by Kim Ha-kee. It's translated by Suk-joo and Catherine Rose Torres. Don't expect a happy ending. I'm just going to say it now.
Okay.
All right.
Our listeners know what to expect by now.
No.
We've done some nicer ones recently.
Yes.
Some random ones as well recently, haven't we?
Look, if you want to spend time criticising my choice of literature, then that's fine.
We
can do that. We can do it for the next 45 minutes.
There's a nice variety. Tell us about the author. First time?
It is the first time for us. Kim Ha-kee, born in Ulsan in 1958, a student of philosophy at Busan, at university there, but at university, as many people did at the time, got involved with the protests for democracy. Which meant he got arrested. And when he got arrested, one of the things they did was force him into the military.
Oh, wow.
So he had to serve in the military, left the military, continued to be politically active, got arrested again.
Okay.
And around that time, it wasn't a case of you're in handcuffs, go and see a judge. It was you're in handcuffs, we'd take you to a secret detention center. You will be brutally tortured.
Oh, no.
And then you will be put in prison. So he did suffer. He was released in 1988, and that's when he started publishing his writing. And it started quite naturally about his time in prison, his experiences. And then it developed, and his work has often looked at life in prison or hardships in prison, as well as what divides the North and the South, but not looking at it in a one-sided way. Okay. Not looking at it from the South side or the North side, but looking... Hang on a sec, these are all human beings.
Of course. Wow, that's interesting. The translator team here.
Yes, we have featured them, but it's been a while. It's our second time featuring Catherine Rose Torres, and I think it's our third time featuring Suk-joo. Sohn Suk-joo is a journalist who's worked for various Korean news organizations, who studied in Sydney University, also at Harvard, who's won prizes for his translation, translated dozens of short stories into Korean. About a dozen or more into English, but more into Korean as well.
Amazing.
Catherine Rose Torres is from the Philippines. She's a writer and diplomat. She's also won awards for her own fiction and her own short stories. And they've done a number of these translations together. So this is a chance for us to revisit them, but to also look at a new story which feels appropriate for the week of Kwang Bok Cho.
Fantastic. This is like a full-on novel?
It's a novella.
Novella.
It's one of those publications where you get the Korean on the left and the English on the right.
Fabulous if you're learning a language as well.
What's my name?
Paul Matthews.
Thank you.
Where are we going to pick this up? At the very beginning?
At the very, very beginning. I hear Mr. Yang signed the papers today. He must be the 10th person to sign divorce papers in this ward. But I'm not as sad as I was for the others, because he has no quarrel with his wife and only signed the papers because they care about each other. There had already been rumours going around that Mr. Yang's wife had asked for divorce, but the news still dampened the mood of the long-term inmates. After the interview with his wife, who visited him in the prison, Mr. Yang acted as if nothing had happened. But Mr. Che in the next cell reported that Mr. Yang had broken down and started banging his head on the wall when he returned to his cell. It puzzled Cho Chang-ho how his comrades, who had bravely endured political persecution and suffering like the Buddha, simply succumbed to despair when they had problems with their spouses, siblings or parents. What is love anyway? Never having held a woman's hand in his, he couldn't fathom why every chapter in fiction or in history had to deal with love and women. "Hey, Mr. Chairman of the Bachelor Society, won't you go out and stretch?" Mr. Che asked, wearing a winter hat with ear flaps and rubbing his frost-bitten hands. His comrades had jokingly given Cho Chang-ho the title because he had no romantic experience whatsoever and had had to remain a bachelor during 30 years in prison. "I was just about to. Have you seen Mr. Yang?" Do you expect him to think about exercise after just splitting up with his wife? Get your head covered. It's snowing outside."
We're reading the book Gingko Love.
Yes.
And I said the same as the Korean title, but not exactly. It has to be Gingko Tree Love, I suppose. 은행나무 사랑.
Yeah, but you would say oak love, or you would say sycamore love.
That's true in English, right?
So I think it's either or.
Okay.
But for those who don't know, who've never been to Korea, we have a lot of ginkgo trees.
And we only really notice them when they get all yellow and beautiful, or their berries, drop on the floor and you step on them, and then, that is not
They've
so
got a
nice.
very, I think politely, you would describe it as an earthy smell.
No, the toilet smell. Let's call it that. They're delicious, though. If you eat them,
don't eat the berries.
Don't eat too many.
Don't eat the berries. Don't eat the actual. You eat what's inside.
Is it what's in them that you're eating?
Yeah, inside the cover, the shell.
Oh,
because if the outside fruit will irritate your skin, which is why you'll always see people picking up the fruits with gloves.
And then I've also heard even with the nuts themselves, you shouldn't eat too many. You should limit yourself to like maybe 5 or 6 in a day, something like that.
Yeah, the thing is, a little goes a long way with ginkgo.
Yeah.
But they are gorgeous, and they turn this sort of almost luminescent, yellowy green.
Yeah, they're delicious grilled or skewered or something like that.
But there's no ginkgo trees in prison, Peter.
No. So why is this title Gingko Love? Is that what we're longing for, perhaps? Siska confused by the title. Tigrish saying, we never expect the happy endings. It is a pleasant surprise when they come.
Tigrish.
And divorce due to imprisonment? Wow. And yeah, I kind of had that initial reaction. I was like, oh, that wouldn't be very nice. And then I thought, well, of course it would be within someone's right, I think, if your partner's imprisoned.
Well, it depends how long they're in for, I think.
And what they're in for.
If they're in for 3 months...
Sorry, love.
That's it, divorce.
Yeah.
No, that would not be nice. But we're talking lifers here. We're talking men who have been in prison for a very long time. But I will explain the situation with Mr. Yang, if I may.
Okay, so are we right in saying that he's getting a divorce because he's in prison?
Yeah, but it's been a while, and there's good reason for it.
Oh.
So I don't criticize his wife, and I don't think you will either. So we learn this backstory as Mr. Che and Mr. Cho, who's this sort of eternal bachelor, never dated before, talk. Mr. Yang was fighting in the Korean War, as most of them were.
Yeah.
And he was fighting for the North, as circumstance was.
Yeah.
And he'd left his wife and son in the south in Seoul because of the fighting and the battles. And at the end of the war, well, there was a barrier set up and he found himself in the north unable to leave. So then a few years later, he gets sent to Seoul on a spying mission.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he goes. There's nothing so big, he's just, getting some information or whatever. And he ends up at Namdong Market, walking down the street. Who does he bump into? His wife.
But he hasn't seen for ages, I assume.
Who's pregnant.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And he's like, hello. And, she's just as shocked to see him.
Of course.
And, of course, she tells him what's happened. He got stuck in the north. They were stuck in Seoul. Everybody was fighting for survival. Nobody had any money. They were having to hunt for scraps around the military bases.
Okay.
She's got a young kid, a baby boy.
Okay, but now she's pregnant again. What's happened there?
What happened is that she ended up meeting this quite well-off couple who couldn't have children. And they're like, we need a surrogate. And a proposal was made that she would be the surrogate for their baby. And part of the deal was she said, okay, if I do this and come and live with you, then you will adopt my son. So he will officially become your son, which means he's from a good family, he can go to a good university, he can have a good job.
Oh, my goodness, wow.
And so they agree. And, not every couple would agree to this, but the wife is okay with this as well. Because it's more than just being a surrogate. Kids. It feels like it's a Three's Company. Okay. And he's been gone 7 years. So that she had no choice in this.
Of course.
And, he's a nice guy, a spy from North Korea, but, not judging. He understands. He's like, okay, whatever. Yeah. He's going to go back to North Korea. Ends up getting arrested as he tries to cross the border. And so he ends up in prison.
In South Korea?
Yeah, for years and years and years. And his wife, over the years, has always visited him. Has been faithful in that sense, come to see him, sometimes bringing... the couple or the husband with her to sort of say hi.
Not the son.
No, the son doesn't know about all of this.
Okay.
And then the wife of the couple dies. And this is where we find ourselves now, because the husband is like, okay, now I would like to make you my legal wife.
Wow.
I want you to officially be my wife.
Okay. What an interesting story.
Yeah, in this situation, because it's been, I don't know, maybe even a couple of decades.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, I think this is the right thing to do. And so... She's come to him and she's not shouted at him, she's not demanded him, she's asked it and he's agreed. But of course, he has very little hope in his life.
Of course.
And he's really, really upset. And so for Mr. Che understands this situation. He too had love affairs or whatever before he was sent to prison. Mr. Cho, on the other hand, never had a girlfriend, never held hands with a girl.
Yeah.
And Mr. Che asks him as they're out in the grounds in the snow, don't you miss women? Don't you ever get upset, Yeah. And Cho changes the subject a little bit because it feels like he's getting a little bit uncomfortable, and that's where our second reading is going to come in.
Let's check it out.
Mr. Che looked so serious and pensive that Cho Chang-ho felt he had to change the subject. At least you don't have to worry about divorce since you left your wife and children in the Republic. That's even tougher. I'm stuck here, so I have no choice but to live like a bachelor. But it must have been agony for my wife to be left alone in the prime of her youth. She probably had no choice but to remain faithful regardless of what she wanted, with the party and so many people looking out for her. It must have driven her mad. I heard from those who came to the South later that the authorities distribute a magazine called Glory to the families of those dispatched to the South. But could the contents of a magazine fill the emptiness in the hearts of those women? You're still naive, Chairman. You wouldn't understand unless you experience love. Mr. Che talked as if it was a hopeless conversation. The guard on duty blew his whistle. Mr. Che brushed off the remaining snow from his clothes with his hat. Let's go in. This damn snow just wouldn't let up. It'll be hard work cleaning it tomorrow. He went inside, grumbling. On the way to his cell, Cho Chang-ho glanced through the peephole of Mr. Yang's cell. He was still absent-mindedly against the cold wall. Although he had known that divorce was coming, its finality must have shocked him. It must be true that men know how to deal with political and economic misfortunes, but not personal ones. How else could he explain how Mr. Yang, who has stayed steadfast to the revolutionary cause through many years of ups and downs in prison, is sitting like that, staring off into space? Back in his cell, Cho Chang-ho pondered Mr. Che's words. Had he indeed never loved a woman in his life? Was he really naive, even though he was already over 50? Didn't even a single drop of love find its way to his heart? He knew it wasn't true. 10 years ago, in that same prison where such things were forbidden, he had fallen passionately in love for the first time. Granted, some might dismiss it as an abstract, metaphysical kind of love, and therefore unreal.
Oh, what's going on here? I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong because it wasn't stated, this is just a men's prison. So did he fall in love with another inmate, another guard?
Fell in love with an inmate.
Uh-huh.
But not a man.
Oh, so this is a mixed prison?
Well, there's men in one part of the prison and women in another part of the prison.
Oh!
So yes, this is where the story gets really interesting.
Uh-huh.
So before he got arrested, he was too busy involved in the revolution to have any kind of love life, to fall in love for anything like that. But then, 10 years ago, he's in his cell, and he notices across the way, out the window, there's a light blinking from one of the cells in the women's block.
Oh.
And he's looking and he's wondering what's going on. He thinks, what if I blink my light in the same way?
Oh.
You know, what, might this work?
Yeah.
And he starts waving his hand in front of the light bulb.
Okay.
Starts blinking, and the cell over there starts blinking back, and they start some sort of communication. Don't know what each other's saying.
Okay.
But there's communication. And so every night, throughout the rest of the year, these two lights are blinking at night.
And they're just not communicating anything comprehensible.
No, you know, I guess there's the sense of I'm over here and I'm over here, and you know, we're communicating.
Yeah.
And he's wondering, you know, who is she?
Yeah.
What's she thinking? And then he has a thought. Well, you know, everyone in here has learnt Morse code.
Oh.
All the comrades know Morse
yes.
code. What if I use Morse code with my cell light bulb?
Okay.
And that's what he does. And they start communicating.
Yes.
And so they've never seen each other, but you have these two prisoners on opposite sides of the prison suddenly having this conversation night after night.
Nice.
And so he learns that her name is Kim Young-ji. She's actually originally from the south, from Gyeongsang-namdo. But she was arrested and she was sentenced to death for her crimes.
Oh, dear.
And little by little, he learns about her and learns how she's in a lot of emotional pain and anguish. She had an uncle in Japan, and when she went to visit, she got persuaded that, you know, she could go to the north and train to be a spy, and then she trained, but when she came back, she got captured before she did anything.
Oh,
never carried out a mission, and she was sentenced to death.
Oh, that's tragic.
And the way that she was caught and arrested and dealt with has left permanent scars.
Oh, no.
You know, really horrible stuff. And so they have this communication, and he's fallen in love. And then one night, there's no light. There's no blinking light from her cell.
Oh, no.
And he speaks to a guard, and he learns that that day, 13 prisoners are being executed, including one woman by the name of Kim Young-ji.
Oh, that's awful. They never even met, but he fell in love.
Yeah. And so we go back to the present. Mr. Yang has had to be hospitalized because he was a danger to himself. And it's the next day, and they're out shoveling the snow in the yard. And Mr. Che says to Mr. Cho, you know what? You're never really a man until you've been in love.
Oh.
And so now Mr. Cho thinks, can I ask you a question? Oh. And it's that question that we'll come up with on the next excerpt. Does metaphysical love count? Metaphysical love. For instance, if you passionately love a woman who you've never seen, do you think that's love? You must be speaking from experience, Chairman. I have no doubt she was special, but I don't think it's love. Love isn't love if it has to be qualified. True love is what you see between ordinary people. But there's one exception. Mr. Che looked pensively at the snow-covered mountains beyond the prison fence. The purest kind of love is that of our comrades, which cannot be twisted because of the division of our fatherland. Mr. Cho, did you know that ginkgos are either male or female? Unlike most trees, which are both. But the male and female ginkgos rarely stand side by side. They grow old alone for hundreds of years near village pavilions, knowing that hundreds of kilometers away is their partner. They always think of and yearn for each other. They cannot even take a step towards each other, but they communicate their affection through scents and colors. In a sense, we are all like ginkgos in this divided land. Far away from each other, we have grown old and gnarled, but we are still joined at heart. Oh, Mr. Yang has made me sentimental. Mr. Che resumed shoveling in a corner of the exercise field. I hope Mr. Yang will be better and swinging on the chin-up bar soon. Cho Chang-ho beat the bar with his spade to dislodge the snow. He might not be able to do it as well as he used to because of his wrists, but I'm sure he'll be tougher if he recovers. The winter sun shone down gently from the cloudless sky. Cho Chang-ho dropped the spade and waved his hands towards the sun. What are you doing? We have to go dump the snow. Hang on, Cho Chang-ho said. He fluttered his hands to the heavens. To her. Youngji, our love was sad, but it was genuine. Like the ginkgos, wasn't it?
Aww. Feels like it could be one of those really sad Korean films with a really sad ending as well. I'm not assuming anyone makes it out and has a new love story.
I mean, these prisoners are usually prisoners for life. These were men who were following, a path preordained thanks to the occupation by Japan and then the war. Well, we don't know. We don't know what happens to them, but yeah, you're right that it's not a happy ending.
No, is that the end?
It is, and so we're left with this image of two ginkgo trees in love of a kind, one on earth and one in heaven.
Oh, that's the representation. We're ginkgo trees.
Yeah, but also it's about the north and the south. It doesn't matter your thoughts or beliefs when it comes to what has happened between these two countries. My wife's father, his family was from North Korea.
My wife's as well.
Yeah, there are so many families who can trace their roots back from the south to the north or from the north to the south. There are many people, not of our age, but of our parents' and grandparents' age, who know people that they were never able to see again because of the war, because of this separation. I think it's important this week as we think about the liberation, about the day the light returned. That light burned brightly only for a few years. In 1948, we had the massacres in Jeju. We had more disruptions, and then 1950, the start of the Korean War. And then 1953, not an end, but an armistice, And, I mean, so many relationships ripped up. So many people ripped apart. During the occupation by Japan, also during that period of liberation until the start of the Korean War, then during the Korean War, and then even after the Korean War.
Yeah, it's interesting that we still recognise that day as the day the light returned because, it was kind of dampened many times afterwards.
Well, I think it's a very important day because it was the freedom from Japan, from Japanese occupation, which is, that was something that was struggled for 3 decades. The other problem is that for many years it was black and white. When you talk to people on either side of the argument, the North is evil. No, the South is evil. The North is good. No, the South is good. It didn't matter, the individual or the humanity or the story. But the truth is, in any conflict, you can look at Ukraine, Russia, you can look at what's happening in Gaza at the moment, you can look at anything that's happening, any kind of violence. And if you actually go and speak to the individuals involved, They each have a story.
Yeah.
And whether you agree or not with what they're doing, they are each a human being. And I think it's really important in any conflict, when looking at any conflict, we have to humanize it.
Yeah, that's amazing what the author has done here, right? Yeah. Being a South Korean author, quote unquote, and looking at things from the Norse point of view, humanizing the characters as well.
It's like Hwang Sok-yong, a novelist who we featured on the show before, who was also spent time in prison.
Yeah.
It should be said that President Kim Dae-jung also spent time in prison because he was fighting for democracy. And when you're in prison, you get to meet people who people told you were the enemy.
Yeah.
And then you get to talk to them, you realize, well, okay, you did whatever you did, but you're still a human being.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a really important story. Luckily, here in the South, I think we've healed a lot. I think in the North, they haven't been allowed to heal.
No.
But there's more healing to come. There are still open wounds. But it's also a really good reminder that love is not just one kind of love. That television often gives us the romantic love, the happy ending, or the tragic romance. But in truth, there are so many different kinds of love, whether it's the love between, parent and child or other relative, whether it's between friends, whether it's between lovers, whether it's between colleagues or people who believe in the same thing, or whether it's that sense of universal love.
Yeah.
The love for everybody.
That love in this story, it goes to show when you're in extreme circumstances, the kind of conditions for love could change so very much. And I do feel that he was in love, Cho, in that case.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. In this story, those moments they had together, even though they never spoke a single word and they were only able to communicate in dots and dashes.
Yeah.
They were there for each other in the hardest times in their life.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so heart-melting and also very sad, the ending to this tale. Your one-line review, please.
A heartbreaking tale of a love that could never be.
Yeah, and the divorce talk as well. I've already forgotten about that, but that was really interesting. Next week's book.
I got some poetry for you, Peter.
Good.
It's Wastelands of Fire by Gusang, translated by Brother Anthony. He's been on the show many times.
Yes.
Lots of poetry, so look out for that. If you've read it, let us know.
Familiar name, definitely. Thank you so much for your readings today, Paul.
Sorry, what did you call me? Paul Matthews.
No, it was a pause. It was a Jurassic pause. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks to the LTI Courier for their help with copyright permission, as always. Thanks to Kim Ha-kee for his melancholic story into Sohn, Suk-joo, and Catherine Rose Torres for their translation. I'll be back next week with another book.
You can listen to Check It Out with Paul Matthews on Arirang Radio's #DailyK every Wednesday from 10 a.m. KST.